What's up, guys? This is lesson 2 in the summer of 2022 Real Life Ministries Intro to CG Animation class. In the first class, we went over making some primitive shapes in Maya and moving those around. In this class, we're going to do some more organic modeling and touch on some more advanced modeling techniques. All right, so let's jump in. So if you remember, the navigation keys inside Maya are Alt left mouse button to spin or tumble around the scene, Alt middle mouse click to pan, and middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Now a shortcut, if you're like zoomed way out and you're like way off or something like that, and you kind of want everything to be centered back, you could either hit F, which frames whatever you have selected, or A, which frames everything. So I'll show you an example real quick and we'll get on to the modeling lesson here. So if I just go to create polygon primitives and let's say make a sphere, and I'm going to duplicate this. Let's do Control D to duplicate my sphere. So they're both right on top of each other, so I can see them here in the outliner. I have two spheres. So if I just move one, let's say I move one pretty far away, and let's say I want to work on this one. I could select it, hit F, and it zooms into that one. If I zoom back out, you'll see I have my other one here. If I select that and hit F, it'll zoom into that one. Now if I zoom back out and I hit A, it zooms in so that everything in the scene is in focus. Those are some quick shortcuts. So F is frame what you have selected. A is frame everything into your camera. All right, I'm going to delete these and let's get on to modeling our hand. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitives, cube. And again, I'll just hit F to frame that into my camera's viewport. And I want to make the palm of my hand. So this is a little bit too fat, like depth-wise. And typically, this is not a hard rule, but this is like an industry standard. Z is usually front to back, and red, which is X, is side to side. So I want to make this skinnier front to back. So on the right side, I have this window called a channel box. If you don't see yours for whatever reason, let's say if I tear that off and I close it, or you have something else there, maybe it looks like this. At the very top, these little buttons on the very top right, we have the one on the very right is the channel box. And if you click that, it'll pop up, and it might be a floating window like this. You could dock things in Maya. So if I click and drag on the top of this and drag it over to the right, it'll dock right there. Just want to get rid of this one now. So that's kind of how you get that back if you don't see it, but usually it should be there. So in this channel box, if I don't have anything selected, I have nothing here. But if I select my cube, and then over here on the right where it says inputs, underneath that I have this polycube settings. This is what's called construction history. I could change things like the width, the height, the depth. So I'm going to change the depth to like, I'm just going to click on that number to highlight it and change it to like 0.2. And that's a little bit too skinny, so maybe like 0.4. And that looks about right. Like if you imagine like the palm of your hand without the fingers on it. And then we need some extra rows of edge loops in here to extrude faces from. And that'll make sense what that means in a second. But so I want one extra loop. So I want two subdivisions on the height. So if I go to subdivisions height, I change that to 2, enter. Now I have 2 subdivisions from top to bottom. And now I need 4 subdivisions for my fingers to come off the top of here. So just in case you're wondering like how this is going to work, there's this tool called a grease pencil. It looks like this little tiny pencil button underneath where it says lighting here. You click that. You click this little plus sign, and then you could draw on your scene. If I grab this pencil tool, basically we're gonna have like a thumb coming off of here, and we're gonna have some fingers. My poor drawing here. coming off of here, so we need 4 sections here, and we needed that extra section for the thumb here. So we basically wanted my kindergarten drawing to look something like that. If you hit the X, it gets rid of that. And then just close that little window, and you can grab like your move tool or something. So I'll just select this again. So yeah, we need those extra subdivisions here. So I'll click on that polycube again right here on the right and change subdivisions on the width to 4. So now we have places to make these 4 fingers off of here, and we have a place to make our thumb. So I just want to reshape this a little bit before I start creating the fingers. So this, right now we're in object mode, and when we're in object mode, we could grab our object and we can move it as an object. If I hit Z, I undo. But if I want to move the specific points that make up this mesh around, I have to go into component mode. To do that, I right click on my object and go to, I'm going to pick vertex. So vertices are the individual points that make up a mesh. These little tiny purple points. Now you can see I have this like kind of orange to red to black gradient on my wireframe here. That's called soft selection. So if I move this, there's like a soft fall off on my selection. I'll hit Z to undo. If I want to turn that off, I just tap the B key. So tap B turns off soft selection, so now I can just move the 1 point at a time. So I want to make sure my soft selection is off. So you just want to be able to move 1 point at a time at this moment. So what I'm going to do is just draw a box around these points at the very top, these like 1, 2, 3 little rows of points. Kind of move them up a little bit, grab that 1 in the middle and just kind of move it up just a hair. There's a little bit of that curvature in your hand, like where those fingers kind of come out. And that should be a good enough curvature on this to extrude our fingers. So now if I right click and go to face mode, we could actually pick the faces that make up this geometry. So if I click on this one, now I can move it with a face. And remember, make sure that your soft selection's turned off. So again, if I tap B, it turns soft selection on. If I undo that and tap B again, now it's off. So let's pick this first finger, index finger, and we want to extrude this to make our finger. So let's go to edit mesh. Now, if you don't see edit mesh at the top of your screen, you might have to go to this menu set on the left where it says like modeling or animation or rigging. Let's say if yours is on animation, it just changes the menu options at the very top of the screen. So put that to modeling. So now I have all the modeling menu sets to work with. So I'm going to click, with that face selected, I'm going to go edit mesh, extrude. Now I'm not going to click off or anything. I'm just going to grab this blue arrow and pull it out. So we started to make some new geometry. So this is like the first knuckle. And if you want, you can start to scale these things in. So these cubes here are the scale manipulators. You could like scale stuff. The arrows are to move things. You could also just use like the regular hotkeys like W to move. It just changes. We're not on the extrude tool anymore. We could also hit R to scale. So if you click off of it and you're like, oh, that tool went away, just click back on that face, hit R to scale it, and you got your scale tool, and you could make those adjustments. You can move it, manipulate it however you want. So we want to extrude it again, so we could either go back to edit mesh and click extrude, which I just did, and we'll do one more like that. But this time, rather than going back up to the menu, there's a shortcut. If you still have that face selected, you tap the G key on the keyboard. That's G like golf. And if you do that, it redoes the last move you did, which was extrude, so we don't have to go back to that menu again. So let's do this for the 3 other fingers. So I'm going to select this face here, tap the G key, go up a little bit, maybe a little bit higher this time for the middle finger, G, again. This face here, kind of be maybe even with the first finger, and I'm tapping G to repeat the last move. And this finger, pinky, will do a little bit less. G to redo the last move. And you don't have to get these proportions super accurate out the gate because we're just kind of building our framework, and then we could come back in and we'll shape and sculpt everything after. Now let's do our thumb. So let's grab this face off the side here and tap the G key again to extrude. We want, let's kind of scale that in a little bit. Maybe I'll grab my rotate tool by hitting E and I'll rotate that. Maybe I'll grab my move tool and move it up. And I'll hit the G key to extrude again. There's my thumb. So we have our hand, our basic hand. So let's go ahead and save this. So we'll do File, Save Scene As. And I'm going to navigate, anywhere on your computer on your little thumb drive, wherever you want to stick it. I have Intro to CG, Summer. Let's do week 2. And I'll just call this hand model. Cool. So we got the basic framework of our hand. Maybe I might want to go to vertex mode, right click, go to vertex. Maybe I'll grab these 2 points by the web of the thumb and kind of bring them out a little bit. Something like that. And now we're going to smooth this. Maybe my thumb looks a little stubby. So maybe I'll grab these points at the end of the thumb here and just kind of move them up a little bit. Maybe I'll move this out a little bit. Cool. So the next step would be to go back to object mode. So we're going to right click anywhere in the viewport and go to object mode. So now we're selecting our hand as an object. And we're going to go to mesh. And we're going to go to smooth. So mesh and then smooth. You click that. And what that does is it subdivides all the polygons on the mesh, and at the same time while rounding out the shape. If you click off of it, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn wireframe on shaded. So right now on the keyboard, if you hit 4, it goes to wireframe. If you hit 5, it goes to shaded. But if you want both, you have to go up to the top here of your viewport where it says shading. Click that and go to wireframe on shaded. So that gives us the best of both worlds. We can see our wireframe and we could also see the shading. And maybe I might want to fix the proportions of my hand. So maybe I'll right click and go to, if I pick my hand, right click and go to vertex, we could actually use that soft selection now to manipulate this hand to make it look a little bit better. So maybe my thumb's looking a little bit wonky. Maybe I want some dimension in that thumb pad. So maybe I'll grab like this vertex here on the thumb and tap B as in boy to turn on soft selection. And if I hold down B, middle mouse click and drag, I can adjust that fall off of that soft selection. So if I adjust it basically to that fall off, now I could kind of, move this point out a little bit and get some depth in that thumb pad. And maybe I want to, if I tap Q to get my arrow tool, it helps me select things easier. Now if I hold down shift, like if I click this vertex and I want to select a few other vertices, I can hold down shift and add to my selection. And grab the move tool by hitting W and then maybe move this out a little bit. Maybe the pinky fat area needs to come out a little bit. So you can see we're starting to get some dimension to our fingers. If I grab the little vertices on the tips of the fingers, I'm holding down shift to select these vertices. And you can see my soft selection fall off only goes about halfway down the finger, but if I want to increase that, I just hold down B, middle mouse drag till about the base of the fingers, and I can hit rotate. I could rotate a little bit and then move that forward. So we're getting some bend to the fingers. You could do one at a time. You could try moving these things around. All right, so let's say we're getting a little bit happier with the shape of this, and maybe I want to grab these knuckles, hold down shift and select these knuckle vertices and pull them out a little bit. So what we could now do, and maybe I'll grab a vertice down here and just kind of shrink in this a little tiny bit. Oops, undo. All right, so we got our little curled hand. So let's actually subdivide this again. So let's go right click, go to object mode. Let's hit save. So Control S, save our scene. And let's go to mesh and then smooth. Let's actually change, so in the channel box, we can actually see where it says Poly Smooth Face 2. Let's really smooth the heck out of this thing, so let's do Divisions 2. Now we got a really dense mesh here. Click off of it. So Maya stores all the different steps we've used. If we look in the channel box here, we got all these different extrudes and all these couple different smooths on there. And that's going to eat up our computer's memory. Probably not too bad for just this hand, but if you were working on a whole character, it would get it out of hand. No pun intended. So to clean this up, we don't need this information anymore. Like, we don't need to go back and adjust any of these things. So with your hand selected, you could go to Edit, Delete by Type. And it's confusing because there's this menu called Delete All by Type. We just want to do Delete by Type. History, so if I delete the history, there's no more construction history here, and we just simply have a hand model. There's no information on how that hand was made being stored in Maya. So we could go ahead and hit Control S to save it. Now let's grab some of our sculpting tools. So at the very top area, we have this area called a shelf. There's these different tabs. Some of them say rendering, animation, rigging. There's one called sculpting. We're going to go ahead and click sculpting. So here we have some different sculpting tools. The very first one is lift a surface. So if I double click this little orange one on the left, it brings up the options. I'm just going to hit reset the tool so it's the same as what you guys have for you. So I'm going to, if you click and, well, the brush is just way too big. Like it's actually moving the whole hand. And I lost my mouse. There it is. Look. Strange. But if you hold down B and middle mouse drag, you could adjust the fall off for this brush. Now if I paint with it, it's still way too strong. So I'm going to undo by hitting Z. And I'm going to change the strength from 15 to like 0.1. Enter. So now when I paint with it, we get these little details. And here we could paint some knuckles. You know, some this is gonna look weird, and we're not spending too much time. Looks like we got a mistake here, so I can just undo. Maybe make the strength less, maybe like 0.05. Get some knuckles on here. Some old arthritic knuckles. Obviously this is kind of a crash course in this tool, but if you spend some time with it, you could get some really nice effects. If you want to smooth out an area, just hold down Shift, and it kind of like irons it back out. So if you're like, man, that's just too much, you can hold down Shift and kind of get it back to where you want it to be. You could adjust your fall off again, and if you want that thumb pad to be even more pronounced, you could make the fall off a lot bigger. Yeah, just hold down B and middle mouse drag to adjust that brush size, and I like using a smaller strength because it takes just a little bit more finesse, and I'd rather spend a little bit more time with sculpting than trying to undo a bunch of stuff. And then I alternate back and forth with holding down shift to smooth things out. Now if you hold down control, it does the opposite effect. It'll push in. So if I undo that, if I make my brush really small, hold down control, I can make little creases. And it's gonna work, just doing that one. Maybe a little bit bigger on the brush size. And in the fall off for the tool setting, you could change the fall off of that brush. You could pick like a sharper fall off and make a smaller brush size. Hold down control, and yeah, it doesn't seem to want to paint this crease here. Maybe a bigger, acting a little funny. Strange. Let's see. Yeah, it worked here. You could also grab, there's a like a grab brush. It's the fourth one over from the left. This allows you just to kind of push and pull on the mesh. So if I want to kind of adjust some stuff here, I'm just kind of looking a little bit weird, but this is a good way to make quick adjustments to your mesh. Looks like I messed up on that. So if you hold down shift on any brush, it'll go back to smoothing. Yeah, so I'm getting some weird alien finger. If you smooth too much, like it'll just make things really skinny, like you can see here. But if you go back to that kind of bulge brush, the first one, or the kind of it'll kind of reinflate a little bit. So yeah, this is a really bad crooked hand, but yeah, mess around with these sculpting tools and extruding some shapes. Before I end the video, there's a pretty cool thing I wanted to show you guys. Let me just save this, and then if I do like a file new, there's some cool models to start off with, like just kind of generic models. If you go to Windows, I think it's General Editors, and then where is it? Content Browser, third from the top. There's some cool stuff to start out with. Let's say T-Rex, because it's super cool, right? I think if you just double click it, it loads it into your scene. You close that. So I have this T-Rex, and it's pretty low res, like to maybe sculpt on, but if you maybe do a mesh smooth on it, like let's you go to mesh and then go to smooth, and let's put divisions to like 2. Click it again. Now you can grab your sculpt brush, and oh yeah, one more thing, if you double click your brush, you could turn symmetry on. So right now symmetry is to off, so I could do like object X, which is side to side. I want to have a mirrored effect. So you could, again, adjust your brush size, and let's put the strength up to like 0.2. It's maybe not enough. This is a bigger model, so maybe we do need like 1.0. Let's, yeah, we can start to see, get some details on here, get a nose going. If I hold down, make a smaller brush, hold down control, I could push in for the mouth. My mouse I'm on a bumpy table, so it's like keeps hitting these little cracks. But yeah, you can see real quick, you can start to get some cool, get some muscle detail happening on here. Hold down shift to smooth it out. See, starting to get some little muscle shapes, and we get some ribs happening. Yeah, so you could quickly take something that's like a default little model, smooth it a couple times, and start sculpting on it and get something pretty cool. And you could even smooth it one more time and get some really small detail on it. So have fun with that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with for next week. See you then.